Hello dear CSU and IT Master students. Welcome to our Virtualization Jump Start Week 2. This week we are going to focus more at Microsoft virtualization, and we will have lots of demos, lots of slides to cover through, and hopefully you all will improve your knowledge and be one step closer to the certificate. As you all know, IT Masters is part of CSU, and you can always go and visit us at itmasters.edu.au, or we have a Facebook account where you can go and like our page. Why it's important? If you have a Facebook account, you can always see the upcoming courses, or same in Twitter, so you don't have to always go to our website and wait until you see some changes. You can just control everything or be in touch with everything with social media as well. And of course, as usual, www.csu.edu.au is our university email website address. My contact details, I think by now everybody knows it. Feel free to connect with us in Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or download our apps. So, the agenda for this week. No VMware, that's for next week. This week we will cover Microsoft virtualization, how you can create virtual machines, how virtual machine hardware and virtual machine files are created, how you can deploy a virtual machine, and I will quickly compare Hyper-V versus System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and we will cover some details as much as we can. Before I start, I think most of you all have already access to our forums, but in the forums I noticed we had lots of questions. Please, please, please keep in mind, virtualization, it's a huge topic. It's impossible to cover everything in 4 webinars. So even with server virtualization, it's huge. Even if you sign up for full training class, I think with Microsoft you have to go 10-15 days full-time training. With VMware, same to understand the virtualization. What we do here is, it's like wine tasting. We're giving you the core aspect of server virtualization. Again, I highlighted server virtualization. Again, if you're advanced virtualization student, don't forget, level is 200. Starting, and sometimes we do hit 300, sometimes we hit 100 level, but at the end we aim you on, for the majority of our students, I think we have a few thousand people signed up, they understand it. So, as I said, in 4 weeks, we can only cover that much, and in reality, we have only 6-7 hours plus the forms. Again, I think by all of you do know. If not, please, please, please keep in mind, our main communication tool is our forums. Probably noticed me, James, are very active on the forums. We do try to answer all questions as much as we can. As I mentioned last week, feel free to help us to answer the question. If you are one of the most active students, you can get a free wine or some Amazon vouchers from us. All right. So this is how you log
Sorry,
into.
Erdal?
Yeah.
There's something gone wrong with your audio, is it?
I didn't change anything. Can you hear me now? Is everything okay? Hello?
We're getting a lot of static.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'll try and sort the audio out. We've had someone made a good point of closing all the internet apps.
Yeah, I think it's all closed, but I'm just checking quickly.
Sorry about this, guys.
Yeah, it's all closed. Sign out Skype. Yeah, everything goes down. All right. I had the same message, but I ignored it because I have nothing open. So, can you hear me better?
Yeah, I think we can.
All right, beautiful. So, these are the forms, how you can log in. Yes, this is a previous screenshot, but it's the same. You can go to your dashboard and sign up to previous classes as well. And please make sure you go to our forums and ask all your questions from there. Don't forget, at the end, we got a big reward, and the reward is Certificate of Achievement from Charles Sturt University with partnership of IT Masters. Okay, if you are ready, we were late already, so let's start with Windows Server 2012 virtualization. Just to let you know, this time I didn't hide any slides, but I'm not gonna cover all the slides exactly like last week. I have some extra information for you where you can go and read all this after the class. So we have only 1.5 hours to cover, and that 1.5 hours it's impossible to cover 8 slides and demos. So last week when I had the slides, some of you couldn't see the slides, and in the forum I decided to not hide the slides. Quickly show you the slide, but this slide is going for you for information purposes, so to read the details later. If you have any question about the slides that I don't cover here, please feel free to use the forums or any other contact method which I shared in the beginning. Alright, server platforms that provide Hyper-V. If you have Windows Server 2008 and above, you will have Hyper-V as role ready for you there. All what you have to do is click Server Manager and enable the Hyper-V role. You can have the graphical user interface as well as the command line management. Hyper-V is usually licensed per processor and depends on your server operating system. It also includes virtualization rights. Very quickly, if you're using Server 2008 or Server 2012 Standard Edition, then you will have one virtualization license included for free. If you're using the Enterprise Edition, you will have 4. If you're using the Data Center Edition, you will have unlimited virtualization licenses. But in your case, of course, it's different. If you have the trial version, you can just install as many as virtual machines that you can. But please be careful. This is only for your test environment. If you are an enterprise student and you are not testing it, please don't forget to purchase it. By the way, Standard Edition has 2 virtual machines. I said 1. I'm really sorry for that. So, as I said, Hyper-V is included in all Windows 2008 and above versions. What if you're using Windows 7? I'm not even talking about Windows XP, as it's not covered anymore. If you're using Windows 7, you can use Virtual PC. If you're using Windows 8, finally, Hyper-V client is included. But there's a highlight here. It's only on Windows 8 and neither Windows clients with 64-bit operating systems. So, if you have a 32-bit operating system, you might not be able to install Hyper-V role. Also, can you install Windows Hyper-V in Windows 8 or in any server platform together with VMware? The answer is no. So you cannot have in the same platform Hyper-V and VMware running. For some reason, both of them, they don't support each other. And if you're going to use one of the others, you have to remove it. Let's say you're using Windows 8 and you have Hyper-V. If you try to install VMware up to version 10, the client Workstation Edition, you will notice that it is going to give you an error. The same applies on server versions as well. So this is a very important point, and I guess this will be also in the exam. It's one of my favorite questions usually I ask, but I don't promise you anything yet. Okay. We do understand now. Beautiful. To install Hyper-V, you can use the Hyper-V edition or Windows Server or client editions. But what about the storage? Last week we learned virtualization is basically a new file. Virtual images are just some files. So where are these stored? Of course, this brings us to the considerations for disk and storage. Hyper-V can use DAS, SAN, NAS. The NAS is used via SMB 3.0. And of course, you can also use network shared folders or iSCSI. So DAS is the direct attached storage. SAN is the storage area network where you have your storage servers like data centers. I think we all know NAS. I'm not covering all this in details, but please feel free to go to TechNet. I have some links at the very end where you can get more information about these. To be able to store a virtual machine, you need to have some sort of storage, and then virtual machines will require storage for, of course, the virtual hard disk files, for the configuration, for the checkpoints, for the saved states. So everything what you do is going to require some sort of storage. Okay, beautiful. Now we got our virtual machine. We got the place to store it. What about the communication? How are we going to communicate with our clients? Of course, via networking. If you're in a test environment, last week I said usually one NIC is enough. You can share that one NIC, the network interface card, and you can create 3 types different networks, which I'm going to cover this week as well. But if you're in an enterprise environment, or even in an SMB environment, small business environment, you should have multiple NICs. Why? First of all, one NIC, network interface card, should be dedicated for the Hyper-V management. Again, at least one of the NIC should be dedicated for the VM networks. If you have a different storage, then you can have multiple NICs for shared storage, for failover clustering, for live migration. The more NIC, the better. And we all know now, Windows Server 2012 finally has inbuilt NIC teaming, which you can have up to 64 network interface cards. Of course, I'm not talking about your small environment. This is probably level 400 information, but just to make the point clear that one NIC is usually more than enough for your testing environment, but if you want, for example, what is failover clustering? I'm not covering failover clustering. Failover clustering quickly is basically having a replica environment of your VM network. If one of them fails, it will fail to the other server rack. Let's say you have 2 server racks, and in that rack, you will have seamlessly continuous communications with no issues. Live migration is, let's say you have an old server rack and you're moving, you need to change the hardware. You can build your new server rack or data center and migrate the clients live active. So while they're working, you can easily transfer the VMs from one location to other location without stopping anything. This is what they call live migration. Yes, Vmware is something similar, but we will talk about Vmware next week. So, the faster the NIC is, it's better. And as I said, NIC teaming will help you to have redundancy and higher throughput. And very important, the bigger your network size is, the more NICs you need, okay? Otherwise, it's all good. So, very soon I'm going to do a demo. What changes happens when you install Hyper-V? Okay, now we got your Hyper-V, you got your storage, you got your networking, but what are the differences between non-Hyper-V installed Windows and Hyper-V installed Windows? As you can see here, after installing Hyper-V role, you will have, of course, the Hyper-V role manager under your server manager, or you will have also the additional services and some services which you can see here: network guest shutdown service, heartbeat service, remote desktop virtualization service, time synchronization service, virtual machine management service, Hyper-V volume shutdown copy requester service installed. So these are the changes, and it's really important to make sure that your firewall is fully aware of these changes. If you're using Windows Firewall, most of the time the changes will be replicated automatically, but it's always a good idea to go and double check if you have some connection problems. Again, I can show you this in the next demonstrations. How can you install the Hyper-V role? I said you can use Server Manager, or you can use dism.exe, or Windows PowerShell via install-Windows feature. Okay, let's do some demo. Chantel, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Beautiful. Any questions so far?
We had a question earlier about the level. What does level 100, 200, 300 mean?
Okay, level 100 is absolutely beginners. Level 200 is less than advanced, intermediate. Level 300 is advanced. Level 400 is expert level. So we are not covering level 400, expert level, and we are not covering very beginning. We are covering level 200, which means intermediate to advanced. But again, some of the topics, like the services, is to be honest level 400. But I believe this is important to know, as the changes are, you as IT administrator, you should be aware of any changes. Soon we're going to run a hacking class again, and there you're going to hear me saying, or if you attended any of my classes, you heard me many times saying that the more you know the network, the more secure you are. So if you want security, you have to know the changes. That's why I added all the slides so you are aware of it. I guess this answered the question. Any other questions?
We've got a few here. Just remembering I'm an admin girl and I'm not technically savvy, particularly when it comes to this, so I'm not sure if they're all valid questions for right now. Somebody's asked, what is Hyper-V Data Exchange Service?
Sorry?
What is Hyper-V Data Exchange Service?
Okay, I think the name says Data Exchange Service is a service which helps you to exchange the data. What it does is basically, I was thinking to give a better answer, but this is what it is. Let me quickly show you. This is my Hyper-V, okay? Okay, sorry. Services.msconfig. Yeah. I mean, if you don't believe me, provides mechanism to exchange data between the virtual machine and operating system running on the physical computer. So it exchanges data. Okay, these are the changes which are being installed. You noticed I didn't talk about. I think I talked about guest service interface. But again, this is just the interface service. So the service is helping the core operating system to have this environment. Okay, how can we have this environment? As I said, first click Server Manager. From there, you can click Manage, Add Role and Features. It will open you the wizard. You click Next. It will ask you what types of installation type you want, the role-based feature or remote desktop. In this case, stick to the default, the role-based. Here, it will ask you what kind of storage that you want to create. You can create a server pool, or again, this is not what we want for now. In server roles, you will scroll down and select, in server features, you will scroll down and select Hyper-V service. It's a role actually, more than a feature. Here we go, because it's installed, I didn't see it. In a server role, I was right, sorry, I was just stressing. You just select the Hyper-V, and all what you have to do is click install. As soon as you do that, it will run the necessary files, install Hyper-V for you, and yes, it requires restart. As soon as you restart the server and come back, it will create a new shortcut icon for you here, which is called Hyper-V Manager. Of course, I've done this for you already because it takes some time to do this and we have very limited time. So once we are in the Hyper-V Manager, all what you have to do is use the control panel icons here to manage your server environment. To create a new virtual machine, which is my next demo, all what you have to do is create new virtual machine and do it. I'm going to leave this for next. And we can also use PowerShell. To install PowerShell, my favorite is use the PowerShell ISE, which is a much easier way to use PowerShell. So if you don't know how to use PowerShell, all what you have to do is come here, type Hyper-V, and as you can see, it will even tell you what commands you need to install Hyper-V, to remove Hyper-V. As you can see, there are many different commands, which I'm not going to cover here now because it's already installed. Again, PowerShell is probably level 3 to 400, so we are not covering it here. So, again, to install Hyper-V, you install the server manager, you use the server manager, click manage, add a new server role, and follow the visit. As soon as you do that, it will install you Hyper-V server role automatically. How is it in a Windows environment? Not different. This is now my Windows 8.1 desktop. I can go to Action Center. From Action Center, I will go to Control Panel, basically, Add, Remove. So if you click in Programs, we're going to turn Windows switches on or off. You click on this. It should just open. Here we go. And from here, you have to select Hyper-V. As soon as you select Hyper-V, you can install the Hyper-V management tools, which is basically management tools for your enterprise environment or server environment, or you can just install the Hyper-V platform locally in your computer. If you go to the management tools, you have the GUI management tools and Windows PowerShell tools. The platform is the client, which will help you to create and manage virtual machines locally. And again, it will just install the necessary files, services. You have to restart your server, and bada bing, bada boom, you are ready to use Hyper-V. What if you don't see this? That means you don't have the professional license, or you don't have the right CPU which supports Hyper-V. What is if you have a 64-bit CPU and you still don't see it? Then you have to go to the BIOS. I guess you all know how to go to BIOS settings, and from there, make sure you enable virtualization. If you're having a latest new computer, it's very common that you have virtualization settings, and by default, it's turned off. So you might have to go to virtualization settings on your BIOS and enable it. Any questions? Chantel?
We had what improvements have been implemented from the previous version?
Okay, lots of improvements. I'm going to cover them in the upcoming slides. I was talking about large migration, for example. It's much, much better now. NIC teaming, which was not there out of box in the previous version, or Hyper-V replica, which wasn't there. All these features are probably level 300 to 400 features, but I have a slide which will cover that shortly.
Yep. And how many licenses is Windows 8 Hyper-V good for?
With the client, I think, don't forget, when I say licenses, like when you install Windows 2008, Windows 7, you need still individual license for those operating systems. With Windows 8, to be honest, I don't know. It's a client one, but I can easily Bing it and find out. That's a good question. I will definitely write this down and come back. To be honest, I never thought about it. But I have, not in this one, but in my other desktop Windows 8 PC, more than 6-7 virtual PCs, and they run seamlessly fine. Just to let you know, I have 16 gig RAM in my laptop, not in this one, and the other laptop. So yeah, but please do not mix one thing. It is licensing for the VM environment, not licensing on the operating system which you run on the VM environment. So if you install Windows 2012 in a Hyper-V environment, you still need the serial number. It's not the same as Windows 7 Windows 7 Virtual PC, which had Windows XP inbuilt Service Pack 3. It's different, okay? Any other questions, Chantel?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a few. What are the software prerequisites for Hyper-V? Is there a way to have a server with minimum services features installed and run all client-facing servers in Hyper-V?
Yeah, we did cover this last week, but all what you need is 64-bit operating system, Windows 2008 R2, 2012 or 2012 R2, or Windows 8 Professional with 64-bit operating system. That's the requirement. The more RAM you have, the smoother your VMs will run. The more space you have, the smoother the more storage you will have for your VM environment. Yep.
Yeah, and one last one. If you have a data center license running Hyper-V, does the Windows not count as unlimited basic server licenses?
Okay, licensing is a very complex area. I don't want you really to think too much about it for this course purposes, but just to answer the question, Windows Server 2012 Data Center has unlimited virtualization licenses. So you can have, let's assume you have a 20-core server with 64 terabyte hard drive, 64 terabyte RAM and terabytes of storage, petabyte of storage. So you can have, let's say, unlimited virtual machines. But each VM operating system has to be licensed separately. This could be Linux, this could be Windows, this could be Apple, so whatever you're running. Apple is not officially supported, but whatever you're running has to be licensed. That's it. Move on. Chantal?
Yep, that seems fine.
Okay, so as I showed you before, the left side is the Hyper-V server. If you have more than one Hyper-V server and you're an Active Directory environment, you'll be able to see all your Hyper-V servers. In this panel, you will see all your VMs and the state of your VMs, the checkpoints of your VMs, the RAM, the minimum RAM, the assigned memory. So the status from here could be the summary, networking relocation, and the action panel from here. That's in my next demo. I'm going to go through it. And what else you can do with the individual PCs, I'm going to show you this in the next demo. So I said you need a Hyper-V management console to manage the Hyper-V. And I showed you already how you can install it in Windows Server via adding feature, or in Windows 8 via turning on Windows feature. If you have Windows 7, to install the Hyper-V Manager console, not Hyper-V. Remember, we had two different components. Then you need to install the RSAT from, just go to Bing or your favorite search engine, type RSAT, and it will take you to Microsoft website where you can download this. This will help you to manage your Hyper-V console from Windows 7, but not run Hyper-V client on Windows 7, okay? Don't get mixed. If the Hyper-V Manager console cannot run on the device, such as Windows 7, you can always use RDP. As I said, I'm in Qatar. To be honest, my demo server is in Dubai, in UAE, and what I do is just use RDP to connect to it. Again, as you can see, this is not in the exam. If you really want to learn about Windows PowerShell, how to do that, I have this for you. So this slide is supposed to be hidden. I didn't hide it for you. Please read it in your own time. If you're going to manage your Hyper-V in a workgroup environment, no problem. You can do that. It is supported. The difference, or the main difference between workgroup and Hyper-V is the not Hyper-V, the workgroup and AD is, Active Directory is, the domain membership will simplify your management. Of course, you can have Hyper-V firewall rules. Of course, you can have different user groups. Of course, you should create different username password. Again, for this course purposes, I am not going to cover this, but I have this information here for you. Please go ahead and read it later. This is also not covered today, but very quick to mention, Hyper-V Best Practice Analyzer will, which is a free tool from Microsoft, which you can download. You can download it, and it has more than 110 rules, which will scan your computer and give you the best recommended practices from Microsoft. So if you're really not sure what to do, you can just use this very useful tool, which is called BPA, Best Practices Analyzer, and it will scan your computer and give you the necessary information. Again, you all know, even though I am a multi-platform skilled, I love security. I added a couple of security slides here, which is not going to be covered in detail. Keep in mind, that's really important. If you have Hyper-V, the Authorization Manager will control the security in Hyper-V. So this is also important for non-security focused IT administrators. Why? Because it is challenging to use and not suitable for complex security rules. It's been depreciated but still available in Windows 2012 R2. And usually in an enterprise environment, IT administrators use System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So it's also important, and probably a favorite exam topic, a simple authorization is used on Windows 2012 R2. So the Hyper-V admins, local and domain groups are empty by default. So you have to go and enter the users that you want to have access to Hyper-V administrators manually. As soon as you do that, members will have full access to Hyper-V. And of course, Hyper-V administrators group is incorporated into Authorization Manager. And I have a quick screenshot for you to give you the idea. Okay, now back to core topic. Before I do that, I know security is a bit difficult sometimes, especially when it comes to Hyper-V. Do you have anything that you want to clarify here? Any questions, basically? Chantal? No questions?
We haven't got that many. Somebody has asked a question about the Authorization Manager and just what it is, but we haven't got that many.
Okay.
At the moment.
Authorization Manager controls Hyper-V security. And if you have VMM, it's Authorization Manager replaces itself with the VMM security. Okay. So that's basically what it does. I'm more than happy to, if the question has been asked in the forums, to provide more information, but for the course purposes, I think this is enough to understand how it works, okay? It's just a Hyper-V security control mechanism. Okay, Back to the topic.
We just got
sorry.
one more.
Okay, go for it. Sorry, I forgot.
I'm going to read the question out because I'm not sure how it's phrased, but how granular can permissions be applied for access to Hyper-V? Can users be assigned access to only some of the VMs running on the server?
Yes, you can create different groups, and as I said, based on the simple authorization, it can be used different. As I said, the local and domain groups are empty by default, but you can have Windows Server 2012 uses RBAC, role-based remote administration. So you can have basically every user in a different role. It's supported by default in Windows environment. That's it, I think. Okay. Now, we got finally our Windows, our Hyper-V environment up and running. Beautiful. What is the resource pool? If you remember, it did also ask me in the very beginning of my visit as well. Resource pool, or resources are the available resources in your computer, in your server. This could be the RAM. This could be the hard disk space. This could be the NIC. And all what you do is basically create a shared environment for your Hyper-V environment. You use the shared environment in your Hyper-V. So you can, as you can see here, my network adapter is using the Contoso network. My virtual switch is the automatically connected one. If you can enable VLAN, you can enable bandwidth management. I'm gonna show this in very detail. So the most important thing which you have to understand here, storage and RAM usage. Storage pools are basically the collections of your physical disk. It's like, think about a house. How big is your house? You want to rent a house. You have a family of 6 people. Can you all fit into one bedroom apartment? Yeah, of course you can, but not comfortably. What you do is you look for a bigger house, or when you buy a car, you buy a bigger car. Why? Because you have more seat requirements. It's not different in Hyper-V environment. The more you want to store, the more VMs that you want to have, you need storage spaces. And storage spaces are basically the virtual disk on storage spaces. So you got here your physical storage, and you can create a pool to use. Remember, at the very beginning, I said you can use DAS, you can use NAS, you can use iSCSI, different, or USB, SATA, SAS, different storages. The most important thing which you have to know is it's resilient and it's integrated on standard disk. You have the continuous availability, assuming you have space, and it has the CSV integration. You can have optimal storage and storage tiering with multi-tenancy and isolation. If you remember last week, we said each VMs are isolated from each other unless you connect them via the NIC. Okay, you can have also this deduplication. I'm not gonna go at this here in details. If you want to have a disk deduplication, everything is here, what it means, what you need, and the difference between previous versions. I left it here for you. Again, I did cover SMB 3.0 in the very beginning. I said this is the details are here. I'm not going to cover this. This is a hidden slide for you to understand how it works, how it is using Hyper-V or SMB. Basically, SMB is used by Hyper-V to store the files on network shares. It will enable you to have virtual machine configurations, create Avhd files, add checkpoints, and I said it, it will support it over SMB 3.0 or newer. So 3.0 is the new version. You have the file server and Hyper-V, and keep in mind there must be separate servers if you're going to use it, and you must have some AD or ADDS domain membership to be able to use the resources. And if you have that, you can use the VDI or deduplication, no problem. As long as you have SMB 3.0 feature enabled, you have easier provisioning and easier management, and more importantly, you can have a proper storage and data center infrastructure, and you can easily extend it via instead of having 6 hard drives which is limited in a server box, you can have a full storage rack with multiple petabyte hard drives. I said NIC theming. Again, this is not which I'm going to cover in detail. This is a hidden slide again. For the people that didn't understand NIC theming, I have all the information here. I quickly mentioned, I said NIC theming is basically Microsoft supports up to 64 network cards in 2012 R2. If one of them fails, it will fail over to the other one. Basically, it's basically data loss prevention system. This is important. This is what we're covering here. So this slide and this slide is hidden. Please use your own time to read the details. And the hidden slides are not covered usually in the exam, but I do highly recommend it for you to read it. I guess, is everybody clear with this point? So last week I had them hidden. Some of you said in the forums, please unhide it and tell us what it is, but don't mention it. I guess everybody understands this point. Chantel, I hope you see the yeses.
I haven't seen any yeses yet, but maybe they're coming. We do have a few quick questions.
Go for it.
We have got some yeses, but what is the difference between a VHD virtual drive and an AVHD?
Okay, AVHD is usually, we're going to cover this later, AVHD is usually when you run a checkpoint or when you create a checkpoint, it will create a VHD file, the differences to VHD files. Again, this is really level 3 to 400, but VHD is the core, AVHD is the differencing, I couldn't spell it out, the differences of the VHD files. So let's say your server environment failed and you lost the VHD file, you got just the AVHD file. To be honest, this is not a proper backup replacement, so you need the VHD and AVHD file to have it properly together to be up and running. Chantel?
Yeah. And somebody had said, you'd said earlier in the slide, storage spaces. Sorry, I'm just going to read out the question. Was there a mistake in the slide? Storage spaces to virtual disks on storage spaces. Should it be virtual disks on storage pools?
The slide is correct. We have 2 different ones. I think, as you can see, storage pool and physical storage pool. So I will come and I can show this in a demo. I don't have a proper slide, but you can use it in both environment, no problem. Yeah. Another question?
I think maybe we can get most of the other questions answered on the forums.
Yeah, probably. Sorry, I had to drink a sip of water. Okay, what are storage options for virtual machines? You can use IDE or SCSI. I think we all know what IDE is. That's the local hard drive. SCSI is the faster hard drive. We have also iSCSI, which is a SCSI over network. Now we got also SSDs, which is not in the slide. But keep in mind, IDE will be only used with Generation 1 virtual machines. It has 2 controllers and 2 device per IDE controller. And you can start the virtual machines from IDE. Keep in mind, you cannot modify devices while virtual machine is running. So what is this generation 1? Generation 2? I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. But last week, I don't know if I mentioned it. If not, let me quickly show it to you. Where's my VM environment? When you create a new VM, new virtual disk. Okay, this is my next demo. Before you begin, it creates you the slide. Okay, what would you like to do? I would like to create ITM demo, virtual machine. Where would you like to store it? I usually store it in my D drive, not C drive. And I have a virtual machine folder. You can go create a folder, or what I usually do is new demo IT masters. Yeah, it will do it automatically, but that's what I do. You can select the folder. I'm changing the storage location from default. Going to next. Here, generation 1 and generation 2. With generation 1, this is the virtual machine generation, which provides the same virtual hardware to the virtual machine as in previous versions of Hyper-V. So this is basically your older versions of Windows. Generation 2 will only support Windows Server 2012 or Windows 8, not previous version of Windows. What is the difference? It will support Secure Boot. You know, it's a new feature in Windows 8 or Windows 2012, SCSI boot, and PXE boot using standard network adapter. So you don't have to do any fancy tricks to do it. Again, once you create a generation, you cannot change it. So if I'm going to install Windows 7, can I use generation 1? No. If I'm going to use Windows 8, can I use generation 1? Yes. But it's preferred to use generation 2. So go to next. It will ask you for the startup memory. That's basically imaging. You go to hardware store and you want to build a computer. You will buy a motherboard. This is provided to you by Hyper-V. Then you buy some RAM. Depending on your budget, you will buy some RAM, like 1 gig. I remember my first 64 meg of RAM in my computer, or even to 16 meg of RAM, you know, the very, very, very early days, kilobytes of RAMs. So, you know, the cheaper the RAM became, the more RAM I had in my computer. So, depending on your storage pool, which means depending on your physical resources in your computer. Let me show you my one. Not the OS manager, sorry. System. So I got 64 gig of RAM. Okay, it's a Windows Server 2012 R2 in a workgroup environment. So I can use as much as the RAM I want. So don't forget, I got other RAMs. So usually minimum 124 is good, depending on your RAM. What is dynamic memory? You're going to see it later in the slides as well. Dynamic memory will basically assign assign minimum this RAM for you, and it can go, you're going to see it in the next one, up to maximum RAM. So it will use RAM as needed, RAM as required by virtual machine. So what is if you have lots of people having lots of application running depending on RAM? Of course, the RAM will go up. If you don't click that, the RAM will be only 1 gig. Finish. So I'm going to select dynamic memory for now. Click next. Click next. Now I can add network card. I have 2 different network cards. One is the net, one is the physical one. Let's select the physical one for now. Okay, I can create a virtual hard disk, new one. I can use a created virtual hard disk, or I can say, you know what, please attach it later. In this case, you know, you can, this is the default. You can make it smaller, bigger, up to you. I stick to the default. Now, would you like to install the operating system now or later? If yes, then how would you like to install the operating system? From a CD-ROM, or from a floppy, or from a PXE based, from a network based installation server? I can go install our physical drive. I can select a physical drive, or I can just assign an image. In this case, I go to image, and I got my software library here. In the software library, I can go and select the operating system I want. In this case, I go Windows 8. Next. So it says, hey, this is generation 1. I can edit it and make it generation 2. Why? It's Windows 8. It gives you the summary. As soon as I click finish, sorry for the latency, it will build me the motherboard basically and IT Masters demo. Let me go to the settings. This is my motherboard. I can add hardware. Okay, I want to add a network card. I want to add a legacy adapter. I want to add a fiber channel adapter. RAM. Remember I was talking about dynamic memory? With dynamic memory, the minimum RAM is 12. Even though I don't have that much RAM, it gives also the maximum RAM. Of course, you can go and say, you know what, I want to give maximum 2 gig of RAM. And I want you to leave some memory buffers. You can even arrange the memory weight, where you can specify and prioritize the availability of RAM for this virtual machine compared to other virtual machines on this computer. So Hyper-V is acting smart and having a RAM management for you, which was not available, for example, in Windows 2008. My processor, by default, it gives 1 processor, but I can assign up to 4 processors. In my case here, because I got quad-core processor, but if I had more processors, I could assign more. I can assign some. It's like a motherboard. Basically, I'm building my computer. All right, I want to assign 3 processors, the hard drive, the location. You can go, you can make it IDI, SCSI, remember? You can select the location. This is a DVD drive. It's a virtual one. You can create COM ports and etc. Let's apply. Click OK. Now we build the computer. Here's my computer. So I'm going to press the button, turn it on. It's turning on, Hyper-V. And you will notice it started Windows straight away. Why? Because I created a virtual DVD drive during the installation, and I assigned a ISO image. Remember? Here's my image which I assigned. You don't believe me? Settings. This is the DVD drive and the image which is coming from. What is if I select none? The installation is going to stop. So my Windows 8 installation is there. It is exactly how would you build a real computer. No differences. Okay? And in this case, you will have the ID or SCSI support. So here's another question. Dear Erdal, where is your virtual image? Let me go back to my Hyper-V environment again. So I'm going to go to my D drive before I jump to my slides. Virtual machines. Where is my ITM demo? Demo ITM, sorry. As you can see, it's created some virtual hard disk and it's a VHDX format. Now, I think one of my system center, I got a domain running in my VM environment, by the way. Where is my system center, SCCM? As you can see with my SCCM, I have a checkpoint. So I'm going to quickly jump to my SCCM server. And I can go to the location straight from here, or I know where it is. Back to virtual machines, SCCM, virtual hard disk. Now, remember someone asked the question, VHDX and AVHDX. Why I do have a HVHDX here? Because I did run a checkpoint or a snapshot. And here's exactly where the checkpoint is stored. I guess this answered the question better. At least now you have, you can see it. All right, what is a VHD format? This is used in the previous version of Hyper-Vs. And the only issue with that, it was supporting up to 2 terabyte VHD disk. So if you wanted to have bigger VHDs, you couldn't. And last week we did covered, we said Hyper-V supports up to 64 terabytes. How can it do that? Via VHDX. If you know Microsoft environment well, let's talk about Office. I think we all use Office at least once. And with Office 2007 and previous versions, we had .doc files. But now we have docx or PTPX. X is basically the new file format, which can be bigger, which has internal log for release silency, which has a user-defined metadata, which has a large desktop support. With 2012, the performance has been improved and it became the default standard. Keep in mind, VHDX is only recommended if you don't have older versions of Hyper-V. If you do, it will not be able to see it. Back to my Office example. If you create a file with Office 2010, which is docx, can you open it with your Office 2003? Unless you got your docx support file, the answer is no. Same thing applies here. Any questions? Chantel?
A few. I won't ask them all in the interest of time.
Yeah, just select a very interesting one.
We've got. Thanks for putting that on me because I have to know the interesting one. Does Hyper-V over SMB support thin provisioning like VMware and NFS? Sorry.
I think I'm going to cover this in week 4. We didn't cover Hyper-V now. If I talk about it now, some of our students, I'm pretty sure they didn't see that. They might get confused. Let me cover next week VMware and week 4. But please copy this question to the forums, and so we don't forget about it. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any questions that aren't answered tonight, I am taking a copy of them. We can put them on the forums. Does Hyper-V prevent you from adding, removing virtual resources while the VM is running?
Yeah, I think this question was asked last week, and the answer was yes, it does. I know VMware doesn't, and I said this was a benefit of VMware. Here's an example. If I want to, let me just go to my demo machine, not the actual running machine, just in case we break it. I know we won't, but here we go. It's running. Let me change the RAM. Oops, it's running, right? You can see it's running. Right click, settings. I want to add more processor. Oh, I can't. I want to change the RAM. Sorry, I can't. Yes, I can change the dynamic memory, but I cannot add the new hardware. I cannot change the BIOS. This answers the question. Next one.
For virtual hard disk, how to configure dynamic storage so that it will only increase as the data increases?
Yeah, you can easily extend it. How? Right click. The settings. from here, you can always come, okay? You can just edit the size as soon as you turn it off. Yes, I know with VMware, you can do it while it's live, or with, I think Virtual Machine Manager you can do it as well. So you can edit and edit. It's very easy to do. Very easy. I can record an offline demo maybe for this. Very, very easy. Any other questions?
I think we can put the rest of them on the forms.
Quickly to make the point between generation 1 and generation 2. This is my SCCM machine. As you can see, it's 2012. Right click, settings. You will see that my firmware, it doesn't say BIOS anymore, it says firmware. And you will see Windows Boot Manager paths, and it has different options compared to generation 1, such as secure boot. There's my generation 1. Remember, it says BIOS here, firmware there, and if you compare, that's the changes which I was trying to explain in my slide. So just one more time to make it visual. Okay, I think we have to move on. We have lots of slides and a few more demos to do. So we can easily expand virtual disk. I knew this question was going to come, and the details are here. Please look into it in your free time. Okay, so what is the difference in virtual hard disk? This is where all the changes are stored. So what if you need to add more hard disks, just to make it clearer? You can inspect the disk and see how many virtual disk. Let me quickly go to my D drive, virtual machines. I'm going to inspect quickly my disk. It will tell, hey, you know what? No problem, you got only one hard disk. If you had more than one hard disk and they are connected to other, chained to other, it will have another button here. It will tell, you know what? You have also hard disk stored, let's say in E drive called ITM Demo 2. When you click on it, so it would show all the chain here, not change, all the chain. It will be like a chain. Let's say you need to edit disk. Remember, I was telling that. Here's the visit for you, just to answer that question as well. You can find the disk location. In my case, it's always D drive. You can see there is a compact and expand versions. The compact version will usually compact the file size of the virtual disk, and the storage capacity of the virtual disk remains the same. And expand, remember I said you can have a chain. This is what you do. So let's say your hard disk is full. You want to expand it. You click next. You say, okay, the current size is 41. I want to make it 41 gig. Next. As soon as you click finish, and I don't know if you notice now, the computer is on and live. Bring, I can't do it because it's live, so you have to turn it off. If you turn it off, it will, let's say you turn it off and on again. When you log in to the server, and when you open disk management, here, Windows X, disk management, even though, remember it was 40 gig, it will have that 1 gig amount shown here for you. I can do an offline demo for you. It will have that, it will have, let's say, 1 gig here as extra. All what you have to do is basically not shrink, in this case, extend volume and extend with the free space. But you can shrink the volume while the computer is live from Windows. That's easy. This was just the other answer for that question which was asked. So just to visualize what I said, you have file A. You modify it. You create a new one. And you can delete any existing one. You can grow the hard disk. I done a quick demo. This is the theory part of it. This demo, I done it already. I showed you how you can create a virtual hard disk. Quickly, actually I showed you how to create a virtual machine. Sorry, not virtual hard disk. Virtual hard disk is very similar. Click new, virtual hard disk. What kinds of hard disk would you like to create? Here's the visit for you. Is it VHD? Remember, the difference is up to 2 terabyte, VHDX up to 64 terabyte, and only with Windows 2012 and later operating systems. Now, you can dynamically expand it. You can just create a differentiated disk. Remember, a few minutes ago, I said you can create a chain. This is what it's called differentiating disk. So, one more time. This type of disk will be associated in a parent-child relationship. And when you inspect the disk, remember I said it will show you the other disk locations, the child locations. This is what it's called. Dynamically will automatically expand it. So if you select this, you should not have any storage issues unless your physical storage fills up. You can name it what you like, and as soon as you click finish, it will create it in the location that you selected. Then you can go and configure the disk. You can add it to a virtual machine. From here you can edit, you can copy the content, and it's ready for you to use. So it's really very, very easy. And if you remember, week 1, towards the end, I did try to show you the differences between VMware and Microsoft. I said my personal choice is Microsoft. Why? Because I'm dealing with Microsoft environments since Windows 3.1 server version, and it's very familiar interfaces. Even Windows 8, you know, I showed you last week also Windows 10 the differences. It's very similar to Windows 7, Windows 8 integrated. So I know the environment, the visits are same, the feeling is same. That's why I said even though VMware has some 1 or 2 points better, if on a scale, my preference is Microsoft, but you don't have to be with my preference. Your preference could be different. That's my personal recommendations. Okay? Do we get any questions? I think the time is nearly up. We started a little bit, but just in case, questions.
Yeah, we did start a little bit late. There's a few quick questions. If you create a different disk and then update the parent, does it propagate through the child disk as well?
Sorry, can I get the question again?
So if you create a different disk and then update the parent disk, do those changes propagate through the child disk as well?
Yes, just in case something goes wrong, the visit which I showed will help you to connect it. So the answer is yes. So you should not have any issues.
Sorry, I'm just reading through the questions, making
Okay.
sure that I think that should be about it for now.
Okay. This is again for you to read later. The details about directly attached disk, how you can use LAN, iSCSI, fiber channel. Please read this later. How you can share virtual hard disk. That's what we're gonna cover. The considerations of storage. Don't forget. Virtual hard disks consume large amounts of space. You notice by default is 127 gig. Yes, you can make it smaller. Yes, you can make it different size. And yes, even though it says 127 gig, it's not been really used. It's reserved the space. But keep in mind, disks are going to be used in a large amount. If you have multiple physical disks, you will have better throughput. So it's always good to have a clustering or redundant storage space. If you have SSD, we know that the IDE has spinning. The hard drive spins. And I think with IDE, 7,200 was the biggest spin rate, right? The RPM. Then we have iSCSI, which you can have up to 15,000 RPMs. Or you can use SSD, which is like RAM. It does not spin at all. But again, if you're using SSDs, and for example, dynamic memory, this is a real level 3,400 example. We know SSDs is like RAM. The more you use it, delete it, the lifetime is shorter, gets faster. True. But again, I guess in a server environment, this is not your main concern. But if it's in your local hard disk, like currently I got a SSD drive in my Surface Pro 3, and if I use SSD with dynamic memory, yeah, this might affect me, but not in enterprise environment. SMB 3.0 is being used, and the details are in the hidden slides. I showed you that. You can use SAN or NAS. We talked about this as well. And it is a really good practice to exclude virtual hard disks from antivirus scanning. So, look, I don't mind if you install antivirus into the virtual disk, but in the host. What I mean with the host. This is my host virtual. Oops. This is my host. Yes? Are you there? Chantel? Hello?
Sorry, Erdal, we keep
Chantel?
getting static. So, Erdal?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you there? Hello?
Hello?
We could hear Erdal perfectly. Says packet dropping. I'm not dead. I can hear you. Chantel? I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Well, it will be available on the recording that Erdal has done.
All right. Can you hear me now? I can hear you perfectly fine. I don't know what the issue is. Chantel? Nobody wants to talk to me anymore?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, you can hear me?
I can hear you right now, I think.
Okay. To be honest, I didn't show anything yet. I was just trying to connect to my VM, which here I am. So my recommendation was, I was talking about antiviruses. I said you should not install any antivirus into the host. Even if you install it, you should not scan, for example, in my case, D drive VM folders, because it will dramatically decrease the performance.
Sorry, you've dropped.
Am I dropping off? Breaking up. Okay. Okay. I think I should continue with the recording. I hope you can hear me. Chantel, can you hear me?
Sorry.
I can hear you well.
I can hear you right now.
Okay.
Yep.
So all I was doing is talking about antivirus scanning and nothing else so far. I did talk about generation 1 and generation 2.
Sorry, you are dropping in and out.
Okay, I really don't know what to do. But what I can do is check the minute out. Let me continue with the recording. And I will still stop by for the questions. And people can just join, continue listening from this point. I really don't know what to do. I can hear you very well.
Yeah, you're working now, and it'll be fine as long as you record it.
Okay, yeah, it's recorded, so I don't want to have the recording bad as well. So, for the people, just in case you didn't understand Generation 1, Generation 2, I put everything in the slides for you. Remember, I did explain it for you. This is in the slides for you, where you can check later. Virtual machine settings, I did show you all of these. They are also in the slides. This is not going to cover it in the exam. I also put you the PowerShell options for the ones they want to create a VM. You can use PowerShell, you can set a VM, name the VM, and you can put a startup RAM from here. Then you can add the network adapter. You can name the network adapter. You can set the automatic start action. So whatever you do with the GUI, you can do with PowerShell as well. Don't worry, none of these are covered in the exam, okay? Dynamic memory, I did explain it to you. This is again slides for you to understand it better. What dynamic memory is, how dynamic memory works. Smart paging, what is that? It is basically a memory management technique that uses physical disk resources as temporary memory, which will help you to ensure that your virtual machine can always restart. And it's used during virtual machine restart only if Hyper-V is low in memory, or the virtual machine has more startup than minimum RAM, and the memory cannot be reclaimed. So it is basically looking at the paging, and it is decreasing or increasing your RAM based on the general usage. I have some slides for you to read later. If you remember in the very beginning, I talked about the services. When you install Hyper-V, you will have all these services installed. And all of this will work if you install the integration services. Vmware has something similar, which I'm going to talk next week about it. It is basically a VM bus and a synthetic device support, which will help you to synchronize your time, your mouse releases, your volume shadow copies, and it will help you to manage the virtual machine settings straight from the environment. The differences between VM integration services and not. So if you don't install it, you will have a generic driver. If you install it, you will have a Hyper-V driver. You will use the NIC directly. You will see exactly which NIC you're using. If you have, that's are the differences for you, which you can check later. For the virtual switch, what is that? Last week we did talk about it. I said virtual switch is basically the DHCP server or the switch which assigns us IP addresses. It's software based and it is a layer 2 switch which connects your virtual machines together. You can extend it. The more the more NIC you have, the different options you can have. You can also use Hyper-V, and the more NICs you have, the more switches you're gonna see here in your environment. Here's an example. If you create a new NIC, as you can see, it will add new ones. So again, don't worry about the switches, not covered in the exam. There is 3 types of different virtual switches. One, you have the parent, which has a physical network adapter, and each virtual machine and parent will have a virtual network adapter. Then you will have each virtual network adapter which is connected to a virtual switch. As we covered last week, there is 3 types of switches: external, internal, and private. I don't want to cover it again. What they do is they create different types of networks. You can create NAT. Please watch the first week recording to understand better. This is all offline information for you to read later. Now, one more time, I'm going to show it to you live, what the switches do. In your Hyper-V environment, you got your virtual switch. All your settings are here. Oops. That's the virtual switch. All your settings are here. You can create internal, external, or private. In my case, I got a physical one and a net one. You can just have different options. We did cover all this last week. Any questions, Chantel? Questions?
What is offline information in the exam?
No. I mean, none of the switches are going to be asked in the exam. I add them in as they are level 300 to 400 information. This is just for you to read and, you know, instead of going searching on the internet, I added in to make your life a bit easier. As I said, last week they were hidden, and I said, for more information, read it. People were confused. That's why this week that's what I done. So I add them in. I quickly show it to you so you know what to read, what not to read.
Yeah, like I said, there'll be a few questions that weren't answered, and I'll make sure that they go up on the forum so that you can address them there, and we're not here all night. And I promise next week James will be back, who's got a firmer handle on what questions to actually read out.
Thank you, Chantel, for not leaving me alone. To be honest, it's really hard to read the questions and concentrate. So we appreciate your time here. Next time I'm in Melbourne, I'll buy you coffee for that. I think I have to buy a big one. All right. Now, System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Hyper-V is good, but how many times can you install Hyper-V, or how many environments can you manage with Hyper-V? It's like ESXi and ESX in VMware. Hyper-V is limited on what it can do. If you want to extend its features, if you want to have a proper management infrastructure for Hyper-V, then you need to buy and install System Center Virtual Machine Manager. It has, for example, templates where you can build virtual machines. It has the update service where it can update all the machines, even if they're offline in your VMM environment. Or it will create an image-based update for you, which can easily replaces your old templates of your operating system image, and it will make sure it's patched all the time. So VMM has many enterprise features. It has a management console, full PowerShell support. You need to install this in a dedicated server, and it is using usually SQL database to control all of your VMs, including your VM environment. It has lots of tools where you can import VMware into Hyper-V. And it's a library where you can select your images. So how can you determine your topology with Virtual Machine Manager environment? So you need to install the Virtual Machine Manager console, which will create the server, library server, the VMM server, and the SQL server. The library server will have all your images. If you remember, with me, I had all my images in a different network share, and I had to go manually to create it. Where VMM will have all this for me much easier with visits. My VMM server will automatically also connect to WSUS, Windows Server Update Services, and patch all my computers. Or if I have WDS, Windows Deployment Services, it will easily help me to create a new operating system or new virtual machine within seconds. And all this be managed in the SQL database. As I said, it is supporting VMware, vCenter server, ESX host, Citrix Zen server host, and of course Hyper-V host. So it is a large management capability. And last week I showed you also Windows Azure. If you have proper VMM, you can build your cloud straight from the VMM. You can have your App Center or even your branch office VMM service managed from the main office or head office. As you can see, it is built for large enterprises. What do you need? You need to buy System Center 2012 R2 VMM license, which runs on Windows Server 2012 or later. You have to have the .NET Framework 4, which is included under features in Windows. You need to have Windows PowerShell 3.0. Again, it's included in Windows. Of course, PowerShell 4 and 4.5 can be used. It's supporting it. Yeah, you have to have it. None of the following 4 components can exist on the same server. So you cannot have the DPM, the Data Prevention Manager server. You cannot have the SCCM, which is the Operation Manager server. So this has to be all in separate roles. Again, if you don't know what System Center is, the only thing for you to remember is VMM supposed to be in an individual server. Okay? This is offline resources for you. For Citrix, VMware, you have to have all this. Please check it later. And how does it look like? This is how Virtual Machine Manager looks like. So you can create a cloud, you can turn and shut down. It's very similar to Hyper-V, but this time with much more options. It has the new ribbon menu. It's easy to use. And if you have some stuff, like if it's grayed out, which means you can use it. This is the virtual machine properties. You can create different virtual machines with different options, with more options actually. You will see if they're running, if there is any errors, the hardware configurations, the chained hard disks, the checkpoints, the custom properties. You can create a self-service quota points. You can create some rules, some actions depending on the virtual machine running. You can have a Windows servicing template, where you can specify Windows to which this virtual machine is being subscribed. You can see which virtual machine is dependent on which virtual hard disk. Yes, you can see that with Hyper-V as well, but you have to edit the disk and you have to click individually as I demonstrated to you. If there is any error, it will show to you straight from there. The access, who has access, I think it was one of the questions. And this is replacing the Authentication Manager, as I said, and the storage. Any questions?
Not that I can see.
Okay, beautiful.
I don't know if anyone's typing them out.
Okay, I did talk about VHD, VHDX, VHDXA. Remember I said it is in the slides later. Here's the slides, but I couldn't wait. I explained this already. How can you create a virtual machine in VMM? It's very similar. Visit based. You create a visit, and you can use the templates, or you can. It's very similar visit. It will evaluate the host capacity and performance. It will automatically place a virtual machine on most suitable hosts, so you don't have to really do something. It will give you star-based rating. The more star it is, the better the performance is. You can easily clone virtual hard disks with VMM. I'm gonna leave this for you later to read, okay? I'm gonna do a very quick demo. I hope. Here's my virtual machine manager. Let me log in. Oops. Virtual Machine Manager console. Should just run. Here we go. It's asking the server name. That's local server. Please connect. I think we did run out of time. If you want, I can do this demo offline as well. If people have to go, Chantal, especially you.
Mind eventually getting home.
Okay. Are you in the office or more?
Yeah, working for the office, from the office.
Okay. Sorry for that. I'll kick James next time when I see him for you. Okay, hopefully this will load up shortly. And this is Virtual Machine Manager. You can create a virtual disk, application profile, capability profile, just operating system. I don't know if you notice, it has lots of more options. You can create libraries. You can see the empty hard disk. You can create services credential as is. You can use the templates. You can even use the Pro button here to see what is going on. I never run it before. I have to use it once. In the servers, it will create the VMM service for you, the library, sorry, and you can just use. We started later. You can see the VMs and services. Again, probably for this, you can go. Last week I showed you a link. If you go to technet.microsoft.com, click and learn. From there, select VMM. You have lots of labs which you can do there. It's out of the topic, but I wanted to show you quickly what you can do, what not, how you can create any virtual machine. Just visit base. You can again use an existing virtual machine as template, or you can just create a new one. Very similar idea. Common resolution. I have some resolution issues here. Okay. Now you can name the virtual machine demo generation 1, generation 2. It's very similar with it, but as you can see, it has much more details than Hyper-V and more enterprise options, which can save you lots of time and money. You can see, you can just import from ESX, Hyper-V. You can select a destination. You can add a cloud as destination, which you can't do with Hyper-V. And at the end, it will go and create it. So I think you don't have to wait to see that part. So where would you like to place it? In the cloud, in the host, in the library, so you can use it next time. As soon as you select that, it's going to select the host. It's going to check the host rating. Remember, I was talking about rating. The rating is going to show the stars. I don't have much RAM in this. I just created, as you can see, I didn't activate Windows. It's trial version. You can just click in the expected utilization, and this will show you the utilization, and it should create you a rating. I didn't select it anyway. Okay, so I have some resolution issues. There's some more buttons. Probably I will do offline recording for you on this. So if you want more resources, Here is the Microsoft resources, why-microsoft.com or why-vmware.com. As I said, I am a Microsoft person. I have all this Microsoft stuff for you. Yes, I'm VMware certified as well, but we will talk about VMware next week. So, next week, I'm going to show you exactly what I showed you this week in VMware environment. How we can create virtual machines, what is the virtual machine hardware, what are the virtual machine files, how you can deploy a virtual machine, how can we introduce the new virtualization data center. I will show you the VMM version of VMware, and hopefully it will start this time at 8 with proper resolution. But I really don't know what happened today as well, but we fixed it. Feel free to use my blog or connect with me in LinkedIn or Facebook. My details are here. You can download the apps in your Android, iPhone environment as well. Don't forget, the same applies to IT Masters as well. The details are here. Chantel, any questions to wrap it up?
I think we should be fine. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions on the forums.
Yes, please. The forums, again and again. These guys keep calling me. Forms are here. If you still don't have any username and password, you must be doing something wrong. Please go and make sure you have access to the forms. A quick demo for you. Sorry, Chantel, I know you want to go home, but this is really, really important. Learn itmasters.edu.au. My username and password. You will not see what I see, as I'm a staff member. I have much more.
The audio is cut out, but he is just showing the forum, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Sorry, guys, but I'm pretty sure audio being cut out here, you'll be able to understand what's going on. Sorry, Erdal, I don't know if you can hear me. You've got no sound again. Thanks everyone for coming. I'll put all those leftover questions, or make sure they're put on the forums and you can get answers for them. And like I said, next week you'll have somebody who actually knows what questions to ask. And the recording should be up. Erdal's recording should have the audio from that. And we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully the recordings, Kevin, should stay up for some time. Definitely for a few months after the end of the MOOC.